as of today. Unless you are talking about a conglomeration of polling units clustered in one area, because in some schools we have up to 10 polling units. If you are talking about the combination of 10 polling units in one place, that will be understandable. But in terms of one polling unit with over 5,000 registered voters, in the commission we don't have any such polling unit. But I've heard you, and I know the area you are talking about. We will also go and investigate, and then if there's the need to report back, we will report back. Thank you very much.
The second part of the question, we talked about systemic disenfranchisement of areas that are perceived to be opposition strongholds.
Now, I'm going to respond to that. Now, I have the percentages from the Electoral Operations Support Center of the Independent National Electoral Commission in relation to the opening of polls. Now, for Abia State, between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., the percentage of polls stood at 83%. Adamawa State stood at 100% between 8 a.m. and 10. Akwa Ibom stood at 98%. Anambra stood at 100%. I'm coming. Because what I have here is the updated figure of the opening of polls from the Electoral Operations Support Center. Bauchi State stood between 8 and 10, stood at 100%. Bayelsa stood at 69%. Benue State stood at 100%. As at 8 to 10, we did not receive the figures in relation to Borno State. So between 8 and 10, we did not have the figure for Borno State. But after 10, we recorded the figure for Borno State to stand at 71%. For Cross River, between 8 and 10, we did not have the figure for Cross River. But after 10, we had the figure for Cross River, which stood at 100%. For Delta State, between 8 and 10, the figure stood at 92%. For Ebonyi State, between 8 and 10, the figure stood at 100%. For Edo State, between 8 and 10, the figure stood at 100%. For Ekiti, we did not have the figure between 8 and 10. For Enugu, we didn't have the figure as at that time. For Gombe, the figure stood at 94%. So from the figures I have given, you can see that the opening of polls varies, and there is no, you cannot really pinpoint, because I know that the places I have just read out is not controlled by one political party, is controlled by almost three political parties, different political parties. So I don't think that in terms of the issues you are asserting, I don't think that that is correct. So what I have here is the updated figure from the Electoral Operations Support Center of the Independent National Electoral Commission. What I gave to you in the morning was just an interim report of what we had harvested as at that particular time. Some states were late in reporting the opening of polls, while some states were very, very proactive. So what I have given you now is the updated report in relation to the opening of polls in different parts of the country. I will address that when I come back.
We'll let you know time.
We are here together. We are not going. All of us are here together. So nobody is going anywhere. When you see me, you see me. If you don't see me, you don't see me. But we are here, and I'm here. If there are any issues, I will come back and address those issues. You cannot. In fact, the microphone has switched off.
So are you saying that there are no elections at all in Rivers State? There are elections.
I didn't say so.
So, all right, there you have it, the press briefing update, more like it, from Mr. Okoye Festus, INEC National Commissioner in Abuja. And a number of points, again, from that. He says that the INEC regulations point to the fact that in any polling area where voting did not end or was not concluded according to the guidelines, the rules say that they are to be extended till the next day. They are to continue the next day. And then he talked about opening of voting in some states. He gave the figures for some states. And quite a number of the states recorded 100% between 8 and 10. There were a couple of them, I think Bayelsa was about the lowest with 69%. But there were a number of the states that had 94%, that had 92%, and so on. Now, Mr. Athawari,
yes, sir.
What's your reaction to that? To the figures that he's given?
Well, they're a bit, I don't know, I guess they would have done their reporting. The question is, 100% presumes that 100% of the booths within a state are active, but it doesn't indicate whether active everybody on the list or not, I mean, etc. So it's difficult to determine more than the fact that they were open and that accreditation was going on. But it doesn't address whether there were any omissions on the, on the list, or whether the card readers were actually reading, etc., etc. So as a first data, whatever, it does appear that you could say that substantially the elections were going on. But I think this is 16 states. I think it's not more than.
Yes, but this is not across the country.
So it's not so. But as a start off, at least it's for a statistician or for an analyst of the election, it shows that, okay, basically things are going on, and then you now start to break it down to the details. And
he mentioned that wherever they get reports
yes,
of incidences,
yes,
it will be looked into.
But it's not that easy, you understand? There are so many places, some of them far away. So, but I guess, look, for me, it's a process, you know. And
a process you could commend.
This is progress. Nobody used to bother with details like this. So in a way, it's good. And when you are doing the audit later, you can then, analyze where it was quicker and where it was less so. And then you can, perhaps reconfigure your resources.
Now, what do you think of a briefing on election day itself?
Well, it's a technical briefing. It isn't, and I think people need to, information allows people to make up their minds about particular things. And even for the agency itself, it can, as a management tool, I think it's useful. I think also giving the impression that the whole exercise is widespread and so on. I think, this is 20 years now since our 99, longest period we've ever been through a democratic process. It's a difficult process in a very diverse country. So I think gradually, but I am dissatisfied with the operations and all of that. I think we can do much better if we reconfigure that, and attitudes and some cultures. But generally, I think the election, now the question is the integrity of the process. That's the key, whether it will be acceptable. Because it is our almost instinctive reaction to say, no, the election was rigged or, whatever. But now you're combining this kind of briefing with what do they call them now? Independent
yes, the election observers, the monitors.
So it's early now to make a judgment, but I think by tomorrow we would, we always go into panic mode when elections come, and then they finish and we move on. So let me say I'm partially optimistic, but I think we could still do it better so that it would have less questioning of its validity.
Now, Professor Dinkalu, in our Abuja studios, earlier in the conversation, you did talk about the difficulty that would be encountered if elections were extended way into the night in particular areas where people would not be able to stay. Now, with what we've been told about the elections actually going to the next day and not probably extended into the night, does that address that problem, especially for this election today?
Well, let us see what happens. It's going to be a long night, and I suspect it will also be a long tomorrow in some places. I've got to confess that some of the numbers that my learned friend and senior Mr. Koy has reeled out I'm trying to find the right word for it, spectacularly impressive. But there is, it's not just the symmetries, but there is actually dissonance between those numbers and what the observers have reported from the field. As at 10 a.m., he's reporting all of these impressive 100% from everywhere. As at 10 a.m., what the observers had was, and I'll summarize across geopolitical zones. In terms of delivery and arrival of materials, Southwest, 52%, Northwest, 47%, Northeast, 46%, North Central, 44%, South-South, 27%, Southeast, 21% of deliveries. So the INEC numbers I've got to suggest, and the numbers of the observers, and SNY is here from the command center, so I'm not, he can verify these numbers as I give them out. There is massive, massive difference between INEC numbers and observer reports and voter experience. That is very clear. By 11 a.m., the numbers had improved across the country. By 10 a.m., the national average was 41%. By about 11:15, the national average was about 74% of deliveries. That is the observer reporting and observer experience. The other thing is security provisioning. There are 322,000 police officers deployed according to the Inspector General of Police. However, that is the entire size of the Nigeria Police Force. There are 119,973 polling units. When you work out the math, no PU should have more than 2.5, 3 police officers. So when Ifama here is reporting 24 police officers, you know something is wrong. And these are the kinds of arithmetics. We've been discussing logistics here. I really do think where INEC's biggest problem is not logistics. That is, anybody can do that. It is strategic thinking and strategic communications. INEC needs to do a lot more. It's not communicating clearly, and a lot is being lost in translation with the Nigerian public. Okay,
Mr. Wango, let me come to you. I know we've heard from Professor Dinkalu there. What do you make of the figures he's reeled out for the observers and the figures that we have from INEC, being that you observe as well? Do you share the same thought with him?
Yeah, the figures that Professor Dinkalu reeled out are PVT. They are actually PVT figures, parallel vote tabulation of watching the vote. Mm-hmm. Like I said, we prefaced this conversation with the fact that the report that we have from observers says that as at 10 a.m. in the morning, across the country, what we have is 41% for opening of polls. And that by 11:30, we had 74%, which Chidi had already put out. So the issue will have to be in terms of looking at whether what the official INEC official opening of poll figures, whether it falls within our range and estimates. But clearly, it doesn't look like it's there. But like I said, we will keep interpreting all of this. But the real question today will be that across the country you have these reports coming in from everywhere. I don't think there is a contestation as to whether we did well in terms of opening of polls. I think we've moved beyond that point. The polls it started grudgingly in the morning and then took a life of its own in the mid-afternoon. And that is cleared everywhere. And as we speak now, in many places, voting is still continuing. As to whether it's going to continue till the next day, it has clearly, in terms of the reports they get from the performance of the card reader. It is not whether, if for instance, the card reader didn't perform well, the guideline is very clear as to what INEC can do. It has to continue that election tomorrow. So it's not a general, it's not a blanket, it's not a blanket thing, that it has to do more in specific terms as to how the card reader performs. And in dealing with this card reader issue, we also will have to deal with issues around mischief. Because if you don't deal, if you just think that the card reader is not performing, then we are not being very honest as well. Sometimes in 2015, I made that point that officials, polling officials in themselves also play some tricks around these issues so that they can resort to manual. And when they resort to manual, discretion is at play. And wherever you find discretion, corruption is very close. So those are issues that Festus Okoye clearly dealt with. And I think that was the point he was trying to make about the fact that where they resort, they have committed a crime. So really, I think we should now move beyond that point to focus attention on the areas where things have moved well, because the chain is clear. When after accreditation and voting, then you talk about collation of results. I mean, you talk about collation and announcement of results, and then the Form E60E. No, Form E60E, which is the people's poster, which INEC has mandated people to paste on the walls so that people can have, these results. We are getting close to that point now where we have to pay attention to this. If we continue to replay whether we opened early or not, for me, I don't think there is a contention around that anymore.
Okay, Mr. Azogo, from your own perspective, the conversation from INEC points to the fact that they are looking at this whole thing holistically, and they care so much about the process and they want to see it work to the fullest. Would you agree with INEC that they're on course?
Well, I think that, for me, I think that the process is going well. There are challenges as we agreed. We deployed 3,906 observers across the 774 local governments, paired in twos in statistically sampled polling units. So clearly, what that means is that we are able to also have a holistic view of how the process has gone across the country. And what that helps everyone to do is that we're able to verify, we're able to also authenticate the reports that INEC is bringing out and put it out to the Nigerian people to be able to see in clear terms whether things have gone well or they've not gone well. So I think in terms of process-wise, there are challenges with opening of polls. There has been reports around violence. There are also reports about skirmishes in different polling units. But all of those are part of what you get when people do not want to abide by the rules. And I think that we need to situate this properly. We've been very kind to the politicians. And I was telling Professor Chidi and my sister here that when we were talking about void votes, for instance, I asked the question,
I'm sorry, Mr. Wango. I'm going to have to cut in here. We do have to take a break at this point. So please, do bear with us as you hold your thoughts. We have to take a break. The verdict will continue shortly. Please stay with us.